The blue black bug bled blue black blood, while the other black bug bled blue. The blue black bug bled blue black blood, and the other black bug bled blue. The blue black bug bled blue black blood, and the other black bug bled blue. The hardest part is keeping track of which fucking bug you're talking about at any given moment. I find that to be the most challenging. Okay. Alright, let's get things set up here. Just gonna hold on now. Gotta make sure my calendar looks like I've got stuff going on in my life here. That's good. Put the chalk away. Get the book out that I want people to see me reading. Project the image. You can do this. You can do this. You can do this. You're the man. Alright. Okay. Let's sit down here. Go ahead and just open up the book. Open it up. Okay. See, alright. Oh, I can't even see what I just wrote on the camera. Alright, well, you know what? We're gonna go. We're just gonna go. We're just gonna go. Okay? How do I do this naturally? Here, I'll kind of point if I'm like pointing to, okay. Alright. The blue black bug, blah, 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 blah. 3, 2, 1. Oh! Hi there. I didn't see you. Come in. Welcome. You have time to have a chat? I wanted to talk about something that I think is kind of important. Okay? You ready to have a talk? Can we do that? Whoops. Uh-oh. Now my camera's all messed up. That's not good. Dude, why would you do this? Why would you do this? This is craziness. Okay. Alright. Here I am. Hey guys and gals and none of the aboves. It's your boy. And while I was editing this, I realized it went pretty long. I made an oopsie, and I made a video that's extremely long. So, I'm gonna break it down. I'm gonna cut the first segment that's like kind of boring methodological dispute of the study and the way it's presented in Kyle's video. And then the second segment is going to be more generally like what I think about Kyle's presentation of it. So if you don't care about like how the study arrived at those conclusions and what's maybe wrong with that or maybe overlooked by such a fact or figure, you can go ahead and skip the first half of it. I think the second half will still hold up just fine. I'm real sorry. I'll say that right now. I'm real sorry that I did that. Because now I have to edit a 40-plus minute video. And, it's a real bummer for everybody. You think it's just you, but it's me also that's suffering here. So, appreciate it if you stick around. I think I get somewhere. So, again, if you don't want to watch the first half, that's kind of fine. It's just a bunch of boring nonsense where I go into details, which who cares about those? Okay, so anyway, go ahead and skip that if you don't want to see any of that stuff. You don't want to learn about evaluating studies and that sort of thing and about this study in particular. If you just want to take my word for it, go ahead and head into the second half. Thanks. Whoa, flying in. Okay. Hi, are you still there? I hope you are. Hey, hi. You probably recognize this fella, this Kyle Kulinski guy. He put out a video yesterday. Today's the 6th when I'm recording this. Who God knows when I'm going to actually be able to put my life together enough to upload it to you for your viewing pleasure. But so yesterday on April the 5th, he put out this video where he was covering an article in the New York Post. This article: study declares AOC one of the least effective members in Congress. Now, I'm not here. I'm going to get in trouble for just having the ads from the New York Post show up in my video. All right, so I'm not here to trash talk Kyle Kulinski. He's a good guy. He seems like his politics are generally correct, but this video is kind of a stinker for a couple of reasons, and I think it's worth going through the reasons that I think this is sort of ain't it, as the kids are saying. This video ain't it. And what I think it demonstrates, what's sort of a fundamental problem that we have on the left today in America. My channel is called eRadical. It's because I'm online and I'm radical. I'm on the left. I want leftist change. I oppose capitalism and all of the sort of ghouls and goblins that seem to support it and benefit from it. They're not my faves, okay? So let's be clear about that up front. And Kyle Kulinski, God bless him, has been doing this show since he was like a sophomore in college, just kind of rolling right through the news of the day from a leftist perspective. And that's great, I guess there's a couple of angles that we could go on covering this video, and I'm going to break them down now in the order that I want to talk about them. First, what does Kyle's video actually talk about? We know what the headline is, but what does he actually cover in the video? And the answer to that one is fairly obvious. It covers this article that was published to address a report that was put out recently, and I'll go into the details of the report and what I think is wrong with the report in a little bit. But two, I've not really gone in depth on this channel and my background personally before, but I have a college degree. I have a bachelor's in neuroscience and philosophy. I was a double major, so I have some formal training. It's not a brag, okay? I'm not stunting on you. I'm just saying I have some formal training in reviewing research, obviously not of the kind that would produce a study with this sort of clickbaity title, but I do have some experience, some formal training in reviewing research in the sciences. And on top of that, the philosophy degree is largely about evaluating arguments, right? So I want to sort of talk about things to look for when you're evaluating a study like this. I mean, you almost never want to go with what the headline of a publication will call it. I think quite generously, we'll call this a publication, the New York Post. You almost never want to go with a headline as a good synthesis of what's in an article, because these are political news outlets with their own slant. So if you want to know what the study says, it's probably better to go and look for yourself. Okay. So like I said, first thing we're going to do, we're going to dive right in to what the study says. As you can see, I have a ton of tabs open because I tried to prepare a little bit for this video. I know it's a little bit of a curveball, but please stick with me. So I opened up the New York Post article, and despite being wildly distracted by the advertisements for other New York Post articles on the right, that I just don't even want to speculate what the audience is that they're hoping to draw in, but I don't think it's maybe discerning news consumers. I think we can eliminate that crowd. And I found, okay, so I didn't even really read the article. I don't care what their spin is. That's not important to me because, again, I'm reviewing this video that Kyle made. So the study linked is from this institute called Center for Effective Lawmaking. And what they do is they release via a standardized method, which I'll just explain a little bit about momentarily. They release basically a ranked order list of what they call effective lawmakers. If you click on this Find Legislators tab, and it'll show you a ranked list of all of the members of Congress, from most to least effective by their methodology. Okay, so the first thing you want to do when you're reviewing a study like this, particularly if you're not in the field and you don't know anything, we'll say, don't look at this crap. Okay, don't worry about that. I don't know what most of that means. You can begin to grasp it, but like the mathematics behind why you would, or the statistics behind why you would calculate things like this, that's just outside of my realm of expertise. So I'm not going to really deal with this, and I don't find that is actually the most relevant thing. The first thing you want to do is you want to look at their methodology, okay? So they tell us that you want to know where they're getting their data from. So in this instance, they're looking at, they're going to calculate the legislative effectiveness score for each member of the U.S. House and Senate. They draw 15 indicators that collectively capture the proven ability of a legislator to advance her agenda item. Oh, very PC. Wonderful to see. Advance her agenda items through the legislative process and into law. Okay, great. So we know what they're trying to do. They know what they are telling us. This is what we're up to with these stats that we're going to throw at you. So that's good. You want to keep that in mind. Okay, so far in line with what this video is all about, right? He's reporting on a story that claims that AOC is one of the least effective members of Congress, and the study itself backs up that that's what they're doing. Great. So that's a major first step towards legitimizing a news source, is if you can go and look and the study itself tells you, yes, in fact, what the way that they've construed our results is actually in line with what we're trying to demonstrate with our results. So that's great. Okay, it's not always the case. So that's why it's important to look at their methodology. Okay, so they get into more specifics of the sort of junk and crud that they're going to include in all of this stuff. And I think with stuff like this, it's really important to look at when it comes to normativity, which is things that aren't just purely factual in nature, or things that involve sort of subjective assessments. Something like effectiveness, like what does that mean? That would be typically considered a normative judgment, because it involves comparing a given particular thing to a general standard of what is to be considered effective. So you want to know what they mean by effective. What does that mean? So they're going to look at things that are bills. They're going to look at things that received any action in committee, which I assume is just like brought to the committee. They don't really go into much greater detail as far as I'm aware. Action beyond committee, meaning it was discussed on the floor of the House. For bills that received any action beyond committee, they also identify how many of those bills subsequently passed the House and how many became law, right? So a bill goes through many stages. They're trying to account for all of those stages with, various different weights to balance out the fact that you're necessarily going to have sponsored more bills than you'll have sponsored bills that became laws, right? This would be the first step, and this would be the last step. Okay, great. So we have the basic categories in mind. And then this is where they start to rank things, because, with these bills, renaming the post office, are we going to count that as the exact same as the Green New Deal? No, we're not going to do that. So they try to address that sort of those differences by breaking it down into commemorative, substantive, or substantive and significant categories. So there's 3 categories of like quality of bill, and there's 5 categories of like how far did the bill get with respect to becoming law, which is where they get the 15 categories from. Cool, great. So far, all of this is looking good. The question that should be coming to your mind right now is, as they still have not addressed it, what is it? What is effectiveness? And what is their standard for breaking into these 3 categories? Because there's room for fudge there, right? These seem clear cut and intuitive, but in scientific research, particularly areas that are politicized, like obviously like effectiveness in lawmaking could be easily politicized. The devil is really in the details. So you want to then look kind of at what's the difference between these categories. And what you'll find, I think, is that there's not enough clarity here. And what I mean by that is they go on to say, I'm just going to read it to you. A bill is deemed substantive and significant if it was introduced during the 93rd to 113th Congresses and had been the subject of an end-of-the-year write-up in the Congressional Quarterly Almanac. For those of you who don't know, I did not. Congressional Quarterly is a private company that does write-ups for news outlets of what's going on in Congress. It's called Congressional Quarterly because when it started out, it was a quarterly publication, but it quickly became weekly and daily and all that junk. As they realized that there was a greater demand for what they were doing than they initially anticipated. So it's called Congressional Quarterly, but there's actually like daily publications now. So a bill is deemed substantive and significant, which is going to be their highest weight category if it has been the subject of an end-of-the-year write-up in Congressional Quarterly Almanac, or for the later Congresses, if it was mentioned on 2 or more occasions in the stories published in the Congressional Quarterly, Weekly, or magazine, or whatever stuff. So that's kind of weird. You know, I had never heard of this publication. I couldn't even get my hands on a copy of it. I tried to seek it out. I just got to like a membership portal with no like sign up option. It was just like, if you know kind of thing. So I can't see this thing. I went to the Wikipedia and read about it, and that's how I learned the information that I'm telling you. So that's weird. That kind of makes you scratch your head and think, what's going on there? A bill was deemed commemorative if it satisfied any one of several criteria, such as providing for renaming, commemoration, private relief of an individual, and the like. Okay, that seems fairly intuitive. I'd be surprised if they tried to sneak something in there that was like, and also if it was about the environment. That would be very strange and would invalidate their whole methodology in a very obvious way. And I don't think anybody would take it seriously. If they did do that, then I guess, joke's on me, because it's still being published and discussed and taken seriously. But I doubt that that's what they did. You gotta use a little common sense on these bad boys. Finally, all other bills and any erstwhile means formerly. I had to look that up. I didn't just know. Commemorative bills, quote unquote, they're also written up, were classified as substantive. So substantive is like this middle category. So you either have commemorative, which is like not that important or momentous. It's just like renaming a post office or whatever. Declaring, National Jorts Day. That would be a commemorative bill. Then you have substantive and significant, which is like it was written about in this publication that nobody can read. And then you have substantive, which is like if we thought it was commemorative, but it was also written about in the Congressional Quarterly. So that's weird. This is not totally making 100% sense to me right now. But again, I'm not trained in this area. So now that we've looked at the methodology and we understand what we're kind of looking at, now's the time to dive into the results. Because there's this expression, it's called when you measure the table, you also measure the ruler. And what that means is measurements go both ways. The only reason that a ruler works as a standard of measurement is because we all understand basically what a foot is. We don't know perfectly, but we know if I pull out a ruler and it's like, very obviously longer than a foot, then, and I try to tell you, well, I measured the table and it was 3 inches off the ground, we can reject that measurement because it doesn't jive with what we tend to understand a foot is, right? So that's what we can do with data, even in a field that we don't have a rich understanding of. We can still look at the results, ask, do these results in general line up with what I would expect to see just as results alone? And then we can decide whether or not to take the research seriously. So I pulled up, we've got this Nita Lowey, and she's really, so this is ranked already. You can see the ranking right here. She is first out of 240 congressional Democrats in the 116th Congress, which is the one that just went out of session in 2020. And she's, she has almost double the effectiveness score of the next person on the list. And that makes you go, that's weird. Because I don't know who this person is. Never heard that name before. So that's kind of your first thing. But so let's go down and let's just double check, simple fact check of the story that was reported by Kyle Kulinski and the New York Post, although more importantly, Kyle Kulinski for our purposes. And yeah, so we find AOC is down here. She is 10th from last, right? 10th from last as far as congressional Democrats go. Now, they separate the Democrats and the Republicans for, I guess there's a reason. I don't know if it's just like ease of navigation or what, but so they do separate them out. But I don't know if you notice anything interesting about this list, but what I noticed is down here, 7 slots below AOC and 4th worst, we have Nancy Pelosi, Nunu Palunu, Speaker of the House. So that also kind of is a head scratcher, right? I guess if she didn't sponsor that many bills that became law, then it wasn't technically that effective. But that does make you wonder if maybe this isn't the perfect measurement of political efficacy. If this isn't the end-all be-all, right? So this is what I mean by, like, does this, when you measure the table, you also measure the ruler. Is this really telling us what we want to know about lawmakers? So I dove into the research a little bit. I'm by no means an expert on this list, and I only looked really in any detail at Nita Lowey and AOC to sort of see what's going on. And it turns out what I found might shock you, might not. Nita Lowey was the chair of the Committee on Appropriations. And if you want to know what the Committee on Appropriations does, I pulled up their jurisdiction on Ballotopedia. We write the checks. Okay? So these are the people who give funding to crap. And I don't know if you know this, but there was a lot of money being spent. A lot of bills were passed and became law last year that were. It's not like Nita Lowey personally decided and took it upon herself to do a relief package for the coronavirus, Of course, she did all of the stuff to become the chair of the committee, but she's automatically the sponsor of all of those bills, and not just for stimulus, but just for for federal funding to things. She's automatically the person who's going to get the most credit for that by the methodology laid out on the lawmakers.org. Right, so we can look at this stuff if you want. It's not really that interesting, but you can just scroll through. I'll put these links in the description, I guess, and you can look at them on your own. But most of this stuff is not super impressive stuff. It's like spending legislation, which again, she's the chair of the committee, so of course she's going to get a lot of love from these metrics. Let's just look at the metrics. No surprise. She gets a lot of action beyond committee scores. She has a lot of bills, a lot of action beyond committee, and 7 passed into law. Now 7 is a lot, but again, given the circumstances, it's really nothing shocking to find. So let's compare that to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and look at the junk that she's up to in Congress. Okay, so she has been in Congress for 2 years now, and I went ahead and narrowed it down to the 116th Congress, which is not including the Congress that went into session this year of 2021. These are the types of bills that she introduced as sponsor. You can see her name in the sponsor line of all these bills. The Climate Equity Act, Badge Transparency Act, Pandemic Anti-Monopoly Act, Prohibiting Law Enforcement Use of Chemical Weapons Act, to prohibit the Secretary of the Treasury and the Board of blah, 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 blah. So this is not nothing stuff. This is stuff where she's advocating for what in America is considered pretty left-wing stuff. Most people, would just call it common sense stuff, I think, but in America, it's very left-wing, very radical nonsense. So you can kind of see this story is sort of falling apart here, because it's going to favor, and this has happened to me before. I've looked at other headlines, like there was a headline last year where Bernie Sanders wasn't even the most progressive person in the Senate, and if you look at the methodology, it does the same thing that this does, which is it favors people who are able to get their bills passed, and those people are necessarily not going to take very extreme positions on anything. That's just a fact that's a fact of politics. And so, yeah, in a sense, that's what the study is about, right? So I'm not even really mad at the study. The study does provide us with some information. This isn't like total nonsense numbers. But the things that Kyle wants to say about it kind of don't make sense, right? And so we're going to get into the second section of the video, which is the more important one. If you skipped the first section, I can't say I blame you. I might even put a disclaimer in to say, just skip it if you just want to take my word for the breakdown of why I don't find this to be an interesting headline. So hi, if that's you. So something that's important to keep in mind before we really even dive into this aspect of it is that Kyle was one of the biggest platform proponents, along with Jimmy Dore and Brianna Joy Gray, who was calling for the Force the Vote movement, which was back in January when they were confirming Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House again. These kooks were saying the squad and like the progressives in Congress should refuse to vote for Nancy Pelosi's confirmation because due to procedural reasons, they actually needed all of those people to vote for her confirmation to continue to confirm her. And they're saying, and you should ask for, primarily it was an ask for a floor vote on Medicare for all. And there's no chance that Medicare for all was going to get passed that way. There's just not a chance. There's, 100 plus co-sponsors of the bill, and that's great and everything, but there's 535 members of Congress, so 100 plus is not nearly a majority, and you need a majority to pass that kind of a bill. Any kind of a bill. But that wasn't the point. That's not like a be-all, end-all argument. Part of what these folks were saying was, well, we specifically regarding AOC, we wanted AOC in there because AOC is supposed to be a shit starter. AOC is supposed to be a bomb thrower. She's not in there to play nice with the establishment and whatnot. She's there to play hardball. She's there to represent the people. The people support Medicare for all, which seems to be true. It seems to be substantiated by polling from the last year. And if she's not going to do it, then we need a new person in there, which is fine. If that's your perspective on AOC, that's fine. But that's different from what he is making this story into, which is AOC should be ashamed of being ranked one of the least effective members of Congress. And the reason why it's different is that you'll notice when I was talking about Nita, one of the reasons why she was so effective was because she was a chair of a committee that has a lot of power in Congress. And you become chairs of those committees by being respected by other people with power in your party. That's how it happens. And that's what everybody was saying in response, or, not everybody, but many people like Sam Cedar, for example, were saying in response to this force the vote stuff, was that we can't, there's no point to this. It's only going to hurt her political efficacy, specifically AOC. She seems to be the one that gets the most flack for all of this stuff, because she was like the first and biggest one, and tweets a lot, I guess, which is true. You look up AOC, she's one of the few federal politicians that you Google their name and her Twitter comes up first before her Ballotopedia. So I feel like I got a little off track there. What I'm saying is you can't both say AOC should be a bomb thrower. It's not about being an effective lawmaker in the terms that this study would deem effective. It's about representing the will of the people and forcing people's hands to show who they are, that they're anti-democratic, they're this, they're that, whatever. And also say, she should feel bad for not being an effective lawmaker. Those are two different things. And I'm not making this video to shit on Kyle Kulinski. Again, I think Kyle Kulinski's great. But this is indicative of an issue that we have in America right now in the left. And because it's an issue that we have in the American left, it's an issue that the whole world has to deal with, which is that we can't make up our minds about whether or not we're going to be reformers or radicals. And you can't do both. You just can't. You got to pick one. You can pick to, play ball and look for, good committee appointments and try to sort of cozy up to the people who are in power, who are in charge of that stuff, to get better committee seating and become a more effective lawmaker and all that stuff. And maybe in the future have a shot of being able to affect the types of change that myself and Kyle Kulinski can probably agree is important and necessary. Things like the Green New Deal that AOC is one of the sponsors of. Bills like, I'll just look at the other stuff that I was reading off earlier. Climate equity, badge transparency, Medicare for all, fracking ban. I mean, all of this stuff, of course it's not getting passed. Of course not. So what do you want from her? What do you want from these people? I'm not AOC simping right now. It may come off that way, but I'm truly not. I'm trying to make a point, which is that we have to pick what we want here. And if we pick AOC, if we want to go the strategy of AOC and the Squad and the Justice Democrats and all that, which Kyle does because he helped found that organization, then you have to let them play ball a little bit. Okay? It's okay to hold them accountable. It's okay to hold their feet to the fire. That's what they're there for. They're public servants. They're there to do the will of the people. But they have to play ball if you want them to get this stuff done. To some extent. That's just how the system works. That's how it is. So if you want to go that route, I don't understand reporting on... I don't understand the force the vote stuff. If that's what you're going to do. If you're going to turn around and then also say, she's not effective as a lawmaker because she couldn't get the Green New Deal passed as a freshman congressperson. Yeah, no shit. Not surprising. But we don't have to do that. Okay? That's just one of the two options I was talking about. We don't have to do that. We don't have to go the Justice Democrats route. We don't have to do all this nonsense and crap and what I would call maybe the incrementalist, maybe the easier to stomach approach. We don't have to do that stuff. But the other option is harder. The other option is harder, and it's harder for a variety of reasons. One of them is that, so the other option is being radical and working outside of the system. It's harder because it's not in the system, so there's not a clear roadmap for how you do it and what happens next. Maybe there is if you've done a lot of reading in this area. I'm fairly, I'd say poorly read probably on this particular subject. But it's not clear. I think I'm probably better read than most people on that, and even most lefties. So it's not clear entirely what the moves are. There's Anarcho-Syndicalism, which is the idea that you got to build basically like trade unions with an anarchist mission, and empower those things. And empowering them can involve working from within the system to protect them, legally speaking. But the object of the game, in that sense, is to dismantle the system in pursuit of, in this case, an anarchist endgame. That's way harder, and personally, I think that's probably the preferable endgame, right? It's a trade-off. It's easier to do the incrementalist, in the system, sort of reformist social democracy stuff. It's easier to do that. But the end game is not an abolition of capitalism, which I am of the opinion that if we want to have a future worth living in, not just for us, but for our children and grandchildren, that has to be part and parcel of our solution eventually, is getting rid of capitalism. And then, so on the other hand, you have radical, external to the system, organizing an effort, and that's going to be a lot harder. It's going to be harder. It's going to be more painful. It's going to be more just intellectually challenging. And there will probably be resistance from violent structures that already exist, like the police, the state, generally speaking, on those fronts. And that's just something that we have to live with if we're going to pick that. But the end state involves the possibility of getting rid of capitalism for something better. So, again, I'm not here to trash talk Kyle Kulinski. I just think, he does a great show. He's on the air, like 5 days a week, covering the news from basically a social democrat perspective, which is great. It's the far left in America, or at least in American political coverage. So it's great to have him. But I think we need to think about this stuff a little clearer than we do. And so I thought I'd make this video to establish the major divide in leftist politics that I think people don't appreciate or understand. So I don't know. I hope that did something for you. I hope it wasn't a particularly funny one today. But maybe you learned something, maybe you didn't. I don't know, man. I don't know, folk. Trying to be more gender inclusive here. Yeah, so what's a non-cringe way to just start ending these things? I want to come up with a system for ending these videos that's not boring. So why don't you leave a comment, leave a like, tell me how you think I should end the video. Tell me what you think about Kyle Kulinski. Do you think he's on point on this one? Do you think he missed the mark here? Let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching so much. I do really, really appreciate every single person that watches these videos. Yeah, have a great day.